How far would you go for a million? We are the Spy-Fi guys, and this is 007 Road to a Million. Welcome to the Spy-Fi guys, where we cover spy facts, spy fiction, and everything in between. I'm Christian,
And I'm Zach.
and today we have a dead drop for you. We are talking about the first two episodes of the Amazon Prime series, 007 Road to a Million. This is kind of outside of our usual wheelhouse. We don't really cover game shows, but hey, it's James Bond related, so I figured why not. And I also got to do a special early screening of it, which showed the first two episodes on the big screen in a movie theater. So I figured, yeah, let's give this a watch and see what it is.
Yeah, it's definitely 007. I was definitely curious. We should say, though, Christian, to be more accurate, it's not so
Yeah.
much a game show, it's more like a reality show. It's
Oh yeah,
more like The
yeah,
Amazing Race.
right. But it is filmed and created much differently. Now, here, actually, let me ask you, how many sort of those reality shows have you watched?
Like, none. I think,
Okay,
like, sometimes I'll be walking into, like, a room and my roommates will be watching, like, half of an episode of Survivor, and I'd watch
okay,
that. But I don't watch much TV normally, and I definitely
right.
don't watch much reality TV.
Yeah, I don't really want like I watched American Idol back when they had two people from Hawaii on it in like what 2002 or 3 or something like that.
Mm,
And then more recently I watched there was like a Amazing Race style show but with pets like dogs and their owners called The Pack, which
okay.
was actually good. And like I got drawn in cuz hey dogs cuz I have a pup and I was
Hmm.
like, "Ooh, could my dog do these
I
things?"
mean, sure, who doesn't like dogs?
Right.
That's a great
So
hook.
that's the only thing. So like, I've never actually watched an episode of the actual Amazing Race, but so that's my background with it. So this one, it's different.
If I could jump in, Christian,
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
remember you telling me that it's
Yeah,
controversial among the 007 fan base because they're like,
yeah.
why are we getting a reality show and not a movie?
Well, I have a answer for that later. What struck me the most interesting is that it's filmed beautifully. First of
Yes, it
all,
is.
it
I
like
agree
it
about
looks
that.
beautiful.
Mm,
They make a good use of the James Bond. Like I think they use a bunch of soundtracks from from the Daniel Craig era. All like a lot of them written by either David Arnold or Hans Zimmer, or I guess Thomas Newman is the other guy. But the weird thing for me was you get dropped into it pretty much, and you never get any explanation about the rules.
well,
Well, no, but like
yes.
so. Yes, like, and so you're just told that okay, you have these nine pairs, and they all could win up to £1 million.
Hmm.
But I didn't know like are they competing against each other or just going as far as they can? What happens if they get a question wrong? Does that mean they're eliminated right off the bat, or and if they're eliminated, do they keep what money they've earned up to that point? Like these are things that I like didn't know, and so I'm like, you learn some of this as you're watching, but others is just sort of not really clear.
In the first two episodes, they do not answer your last question. They don't explain whether you get to keep them. If it's like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire,
A
where you can
millionaire, if
keep
there's
some of the
tiers, yeah,
money.
no.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So that was one thing. Also, the interesting thing is that none of the contestants, at least in those first two episodes, meet each other. It's not like they're competing against each other. It's different in that way.
Which I actually kind of liked that
Yeah.
because although it would be more dramatic if you know that only one group of people can come home with the million, I
hmm
also kind of like that it's not so like vicious where they're against one another, kind of like Survivor, you know?
Which is, I think, the difference between like British shows and American shows. Like if you watch, say, an American cooking reality show, it's very cutthroat. People will sabotage each other. Then you
Mm,
watch Great British Bake Off, where everyone's trying to get through and they're helping each other. Some if someone needs extra cream or whatever, it's like here it is, here take it. So
right. I have seen that show. That's the one reality show I've
that's
seen.
yeah, that also would be like an exception as well. But hey,
Mhm.
that's Bake Off.
Yeah,
Everyone watches Bake Off.
it's its own thing.
So we have in the first two episodes meet four different teams. We have the Bowen brothers. What are their
It's
James
like
and
Joey and something.
Joey and James, I think. Well,
Oh,
I remember I laughed because one of them, Jimmy, his name is basically one letter away from being James Bond. He's James Bone.
Right. Oh, that's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah.
And then you have the sisters, Sana and Saika.
Hmm.
And then you have Kamala and Josh, who are a married couple. And then you have Keith and Nick, who are a couple of ex-cops who are, used to work together. So what do you think of these pairs?
Of the people? Well, I have a lot to say about the people. So
okay, let's hear it.
Well, the opening,
yeah,
they say, what would it take for a normal? I think it said an ordinary person, an ordinary
if you dropped
person,
an ordinary person, into
to
a
do
James Bond adventure,
right? But then I'm like, but the whole point of James Bond is that he's not an ordinary person.
I know. So it's more of a what happens when you drop an ordinary person into a James Bond adventure.
Yeah.
So it's not. Yeah.
So
which I liked as a.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Though, so it's more like everyone in the show is like the Bond girl, where they get caught up in an adventure without meaning to be.
Interesting. I didn't thought of it that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Though the Bond girls, they're not always they're not generally like a totally normal person, right? They're usually somehow
sometimes
involved.
Yeah.
Sometimes,
true.
but not often. Yeah, I don't know. Are we going to go through the episodes, or are we just kind of talking about the characters?
We're just talking through. So I also do have all of the questions, and I kind of want to see which ones you remember the answers.
Okay,
to.
Wait. I want to talk about the questions. I'm just going to come on and say it. I didn't like it
because they weren't James Bond trivia.
No.
Because that's what a lot of people think. Like I've seen out there that people are like, "Why is it all just general trivia? Why is it not like the show?" And that's the disconnect. Is people were thinking this was about people being the ultimate James Bond fan, and it's not that show.
Is that what people thought? That's not what I thought.
Well, that's what the Bond fan community, well, at least some people on Bond Twitter, were like, "Why is it not this?"
Oh, no, I didn't expect that. I'll tell you. So, as someone who's played bar trivia for a long time, as you have too,
yeah.
It's luck. It's almost luck based. Okay.
Well, there's some like the first round of questions is general knowledge that people should know.
Well, that's the thing, right? So, like the first couple guys, Joey and what's his name, the brothers,
the Bone Brothers, yes.
The Bone Brothers. So maybe this is me being prejudiced because they talk like Dick Van Dyke from Mary Poppins, but they sound like they come right out of like a shipyard in the back of like Newcastle or something. So I was like, you're asking them about like Shakespeare? Like that's not fair.
Jimmy has like a degree in like English lit or something like that. Well, so you are being
was that in the intro?
Stereotypical. No, he talks about it. He's like, you're the one who studied English. And
stuff that's like a throwaway line.
Yeah.
Sometimes people don't know stuff, and you have $1 million riding on it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't think that's fair. If the point of the game show is to be like James Bond doesn't answer trivia questions. Okay? And like maybe once they do trivia, but to have every single step of the line be answering trivia questions, the ones where they can like figure out the answer, like the tarantula one, the python one, I like those more. That's more reasonable. Or the one where they're on the water and can kind of, figure it out. But the ones that are like, who invaded Scotland in 83 AD? And you like can't figure it out? I don't know.
All right. Well, since you brought them up, let's talk through the questions. So I have it broken down by each pair. So we've got the Bone Brothers. Their first question, what was the Shakespeare's play about a Scottish king? Was it Hamlet, Richard III, or Macbeth? Did you know this one?
Okay, so here's the thing. I wasn't paying close attention, and I thought the question was like, who's the real king that like was around here? And then Shakespeare wrote a play about him. So I was like, Hamlet's not real, Macbeth's not real, it's got to be Richard III. Even though Richard III is not Scottish.
Was Macbeth not real?
Good question.
That was a question.
Because they didn't show the question again, I couldn't go back and look at it.
Yeah. He was real, though.
Oh.
Yeah. That was part of the question. Which they said, I think that because they were agonizing about that, is which real king.
But then when I thought about it, I was Scottish. Like, well, Richard III, I don't think he's Scottish.
No.
That's like an English name, so that makes sense. But yeah, I guess I would have been out right away.
Whereas I'm like, no, it's definitely Macbeth. Mm-hmm. But of course, I don't have, I think it was for 10,000 pounds riding on the line, so I was not,
Oh, by the way, also,
yeah,
I know Who Wants to Be a Millionaire did this, but you're gonna make him crawl through like a cold lock to get the briefcase, and then it's like waiting for them to get the answer. It was like something out of Squid Game. It was like I'm not a sadist. It's not torturing these people for my entertainment.
Yep. So their second question, which is one of the ones that I like these challenges, the more physical, well, not necessarily physical, but like they have to do something to figure it out. How long is this snake? And they had to actually like grab the snake and like measure it.
One of them, he just reached down and pulled the briefcase out. I was pretty impressed by that.
Yeah, that was the other pair. Yeah.
But then
no, that was this one too. Yeah.
Yeah. It was the Bone Brothers again. But then also, I was like, there's just a tape measure sitting right there. What? I thought they were gonna have to like find. Like
I was
object.
fine with that. I thought they were gonna have to like estimate, just like, all right, here's a guess. But like the fact that they could actually do something to measure it, I like that.
Okay, but again, what movie does James Bond measure a boa constrictor? I mean, the Amazon note says in James Bond movies he does wrestle a boa constrictor. So I guess
you can't actually have them wrestle about safety concerns.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I thought one of them was going to lie down next to the boa constrictor, be like,
I thought about that too.
How tall I am.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Third question that we see from them in the first two episodes is how fast is the speed limit in the Venice Canal? 2 kph, 7 kph, or 43 kph. Now, this is where I would have been out because I have no reference point in how fast things are in kilometers per hour.
Well, sure. Yeah. Well, first of all, it should be knots per hour. They're on the water. Come on.
Good point.
Yeah, but I was impressed by how they figured it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they're basically like, all right, 2 kilometers per hour, that's like nothing. And 43...
Yeah, I was like, do boats even go that fast? It's like a jet ski? I don't know. I was like, what happened to Daniel? What happened to the guy who gave them a ride there?
He just left.
They just turn and ask him.
A lot of these people who they like go up and ask like or like to do stuff, they've got to be in on it. It can't just be random people.
I mean, clearly, yeah, it's a reality show. But Christian, I must say, nothing is more James Bond than wandering around Venice asking random people where things are. It felt like I was watching a James Bond movie at that moment.
All right, so those are the 3 for the Bone Brothers. Next we go to Sana and Saika, who have first, which army failed to conquer Scotland? The Huns, the Romans, or the Vikings?
Yeah, this I did know.
Yeah.
The Vikings was a good one because they're active in that area and the time period is right.
But they didn't fail.
Yeah, but you know what? They'll be fine. You know, they both went to college, and one of them was like a fraud analyst or something.
Yeah, right. So yeah, I felt bad for them. I was like, oh, I wanted them to continue, but
yeah, sure.
They guessed the Huns, which was the wrong answer. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it just goes to show, like, just because you go to college doesn't mean you necessarily know this stuff.
Well, I was amused that they'd never heard of the Huns.
They'd never even heard of them.
Yeah. No.
They need to watch Mulan.
Did they not watch Mulan?
I guess not. Yeah.
And so they get eliminated on that first question, so they don't even get anything, which I felt bad about.
Yep.
Then we go to Kamala and Josh, the married couple, who have, the first question: what mythical creature used to roam Scotland? Cyclops, devil, or unicorn?
Yeah, it was a horned creature. So I felt like this one was. I think this was the easiest of all the questions they had.
Well, the devil has horns.
Yeah, the devil has horns, but he's not a creature. And he definitely didn't roam Scotland.
I don't know. So depends on, some Scots will say that, that one of the kings was, or one of the English kings was the devil.
I don't know if we're going to talk about this later, but this is the part which has a location from a James Bond movie. That bridge. Isn't that bridge the one from No Time to Die?
It is. But also, they all start in Scotland, which was in Skyfall.
Well, yeah, I mean, and also Casino Royale, don't forget.
Scotland? Oh, we're not talking about that Casino Royale.
Yeah, never forget.
Also, Venice, St. Mark's Square has been in at least 2 James Bond films.
And Indiana Jones.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wait, well, anyway, do we want to talk about the tower crane? Do we want to talk about the tower crane now or talk about it later?
Yeah, so let's go to that. So they do the crane. They basically do the crane from Casino Royale where they have to go up.
Yeah.
In the location from No Time to Die where that bridge is, where he does the jump off the bridge. Right. So it's a nice melding of 2 Daniel Craig films.
So I thought they were going to jump off the bridge with a rope like Daniel Craig did.
No.
What? It's an extreme reality show, but also I cannot believe Josh made his wife climb the tower crane.
Hey, he has a severe fear of heights. She does not.
I mean, come on. Are you serious? Dude, like, I'm sorry. Maybe this is me being regressive, but it's like, man up and don't make your wife do that shit.
So, my sister who's not a big James Bond fan, but decided to give this a shot, had similar reactions to you. And then about episode 5 or so, she took those feelings back because of something that's revealed then.
Okay.
About something that happened to Josh and why he has low self-confidence.
Oh boy. Well, I can't believe that she went along with it as well. That was also kind of amazing.
What I appreciate is they both were like, they both could figure out what their strengths and weaknesses were, and they worked together. They communicated well as a couple, which I appreciated.
Yeah, I also I wonder if the producers were like, let's kind of balance who does what and all that stuff.
Maybe.
I also feel like climbing that tower crane is like way harder than all the other stuff everybody else did in the 2 episodes. Like, it's not like balanced. I feel like their challenges were way harder than everybody else's.
Interesting. Thinking about like, well, what was the second thing? Like they had to like climb into the window. I don't know, wrestling or like measuring a snake, not as hard.
No. And then like the spider, where the spider's like moving all over the place.
We actually skipped a question about the what year is this video of Princess Elizabeth and her children from? It was 1940, 1950, or 1960. I like how they logicked it out here of all right. By 60, she was already queen because they said Princess Elizabeth, and then at 1940 she didn't have kids yet, so it had to be 1950.
But yeah, also as audience members, we know that the king, because it's princess.
It's princess.
Okay, so like, well, the king was the king in 1940, so she could have been the princess in 1940 as well. So that didn't help, but they knew their British history.
They knew that she didn't have kids in 1940 yet. Yeah. Yeah, so, and then after going up the crane, they had to answer the question about the odorless, flavorless poison. And what was the main ingredient? Arsenic, sulfur, or gold? And they actually, for having to do such a physical challenge, it was an easier question because obviously gold has a color, sulfur has a scent. And, there's the line in, what's that, the Chicago song, Seven Dead, whatever that. Some men just can't hold their arsenic.
Yeah, I mean, like, arsenic's a poison.
Yeah.
Right.
So it was an easier question. Yeah. And then you had the last thing that we see from them is how much does this tarantula weigh? Which I enjoyed this. I mean, I also don't like spiders. I'm like, I was like feeling just, shivers, but I enjoyed seeing them work it out.
Yeah, I also thought that they were going to take the tank. What I would have done if the scale was feasible is put the tank on it.
Tank on there and then get the spider out.
And then dump the spider out and then put the tank on it again.
I did consider that, but it didn't look like it was big enough for that.
Yeah, I mean, or you could take like a jar, you put the spider in the jar, you weigh it, then you dump the spider out, weigh the jar, and then subtract the difference.
Getting the spider into the jar seems harder than doing what they did.
I don't know. Yeah, I suppose. Also, again, this isn't... I don't know. I know James Bond deals with spiders sometimes.
Yeah.
So I guess it works. The snakes was also more Indiana Jones.
Spider, there's this tarantula in Dr. No, the first James Bond film where it crawls on top of him.
Yes, that's right.
Or actually on top of glass that's on top of him, but that's here.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. So that's the last we see in the first 2 episodes of Kamal and Josh. And then we go to Keith and Nick, who are the 2 ex-cops. And so their first question is, what were the powerful family groups that ran Scotland called? Factions, clans, or dynasties? Obviously, it's the clans.
Yeah.
And then they go to Castle Starker, where they climb into the aviary, and they're asked, what were the hawks in Castle Starker used for? Spying, hunting, or sending messages? And they logic their way at, okay, they weren't for spying because you had pigeons for that.
I did like how the show kind of respects your time, where it like moves along when you're introducing these new pairs. It kind of hurries up.
Yeah. So they guess hunting, which is correct, and then finally they have to get into this building, and they see this painting on. There's all the snakes in the another thing with snakes, but then they also have a snake inside the briefcase itself, which was funny.
Yeah,
but then
I thought they would have taken like an item, like a hook and like lift the
Yeah.
briefcase out. Mhm.
But yeah, so they have the question here was like, there's the famous portrait or painting on the wall, which had been stolen however many years ago, and along with a lot of other paintings and artwork. And they're
Mhm.
asked, how many years in prison did the art thieves get? Was it 2 years, 8 years, or 45 years?
And then they did something smart where they looked around the room to see if maybe there was a clue around the room, which there
So
wasn't. But yeah,
what Carolyn thinks is there was a clue because you see, Brian. We haven't mentioned Brian Cox at all as the controller, but
right.
he's the person who's been giving them all these instructions and all this. But when you see him afterwards, you see him with a newspaper which has, the amount, but it's all in Italian.
Mhm.
So and they can't speak Italian. So I'm wondering if it was there and they just couldn't read it.
Yeah, but, I mean, but they could read the numbers.
Well, the numbers were in Italian as well.
Mhm.
It wasn't like written.
Oh
They
yeah,
weren't like,
Italian
yeah.
numbers.
Yeah. It was 2 years, 8 years, or 45 years. What was your get instinct on that?
I didn't really have one. I was like, yeah,
No?
25 years, sure. I don't know, whatever.
They guess 45 years, but it was 8 years. And I like their reasoning, though, because, yeah, the French courts are notoriously harsh, so you would think it would be the harshest punishment.
They said it was £100 million worth of art.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I could see it.
Okay, so those were all the questions. But so going back to the teams, who was your favorite out of these pairs?
Well, I did like the two sisters. They were a nice
Yeah.
contrast from the brothers. Like they were
Hmm.
like college educated, not super like fit. I mean, like no, none of them were. They were all like normal people, and none of them were
Yeah.
like super fit. They were
Hmm.
cute. Not gonna
Hmm.
lie. So yeah, I did not like how Josh. Like I mentioned, how Josh made his wife
Right.
climb the crane, and then I also liked how the two cops were like sweating.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then yeah, the brothers I guess were okay, but the thing is, I got annoyed with all of them, and this
Okay.
isn't their fault. It's just
Right.
because it's a reality show. But they're like always talking. I was like, for the love of God, stop talking.
You realize, of course, that there were probably long stretches where they weren't talking, and they just cut all those out.
I know it's not their fault. It's the director's fault, but it still drove me up the wall when they're like, "Wow, it's really cold here. Whoa, a mountain. Yeah, a mountain." It's like, "Oh my God, stop talking."
There's less of that as the show goes on. So I'll say that I did watch all. I'm on these about to start the 7th episode out of 8. So I'm well through it. There's less of that now, and more actually. What the moments they capture now are some more of the moments of introspection between the two between pairs as well.
Yeah.
And also getting more to learn more about them.
Does it become more exciting like a James Bond movie?
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's good.
And what I've heard is 8, the final episode, is the most exciting. So I've been trying to stay spoiler free as to what happens, what the challenge is. So I'm very excited to see what that is going in.
It looks like it dropped just a few days ago at the time that we're recording.
Yeah. Well, no. I think they all released in one lump sum.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, on the 10th or so.
I also liked how the first episode ended with a cliffhanger.
That was
That was
and
fun.
there are other, like the 6th episode also ends like there are some that do, some that don't. 6th episode leads into a cliffhanger. I was like, and but we chose that moment to stop. I was like, I need to know what the answer to that question was.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess the only other thing I want to talk about is how I was this close to applying for the show with Lance, who listeners may remember from our Tom Clancy and James Bond episodes, until we read the fine print that says you had to be a UK resident.
Yeah, that makes sense. You would have been screwed the first time they asked you about kilometers.
It would, yeah. Hey, but I think I could have done some of the other stuff. I don't know if I could have gotten up and on the crane. I'll admit that.
I'd like to think that I could have. I used to do ropes course and stuff like that.
I mean, I used to do rock climbing, but still, that's a lot higher than rock climbing.
Well, the part where the wind was blowing when she was like out
oh
on
God.
I thought she was going to get blown off. I mean, she's
oof.
hooked on. She would have been fine, but that would have been exciting.
Well, actually, that's the other thing I want to talk about is like how much, like, there's definitely safety people there, and they're like just out of shot in all of the shots.
Right.
And also for some of these where they're like, getting on someone's boat or getting into someone's car, where's the camera?
Well, that's true. That's true. Like when she's climbing, was there a camera guy next to her? They probably
Like
used a
some of them are
drone.
clearly like drone or helicopter shots, but there's other where it's like either
Hmm.
it's got to be super zoomed in or something, because or the camera operator is climbing it. Did they get Tom Cruise to be the cameraman for these? That's the only solution.
Well, speaking of Tom Cruise, if you can't do this, you just need to write to Hollywood and say, do Mission Impossible, Mission a Million, or something like that.
Oh, no. That franchise is so tightly in Tom Cruise's grasp, he will never let it go.
He'll never let them do a reality show using that
No,
movie.
no,
or use that
he
name.
won't even let them do a TV show spin-off.
But it was a TV show.
I know.
Doesn't matter.
No. Do you have anything else to say about the show?
I liked when they call Bowie Boy. Take us to that boy.
Yeah, yeah.
I also like when they call their mom. That's totally something James Bond would do. Absolutely.
I'm sensing some sarcasm here.
Yeah. Are you asking like for a rating or just general?
No.
Other thoughts?
If there's anything else, any other thoughts you wanted to share about it?
I wanted more Bond. Make it more Bond-like.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
that's
the
all.
first. So the thing is, for that, you got to ramp it up. You really do.
Do you remember the training in The Spy Behind Home Plate? No, The Catcher was a spy.
It was Spy.
The Catcher was a spy. When they're like, "There's a man in that house. Get in there and kill him." That's what I thought the show was going to be. Like, here's a paintball gun. Get in there and shoot the guy with your paintball gun.
There are so many ways that could go wrong that I see why they didn't do that. Just from like previews and trailers, I know there's this point where someone has to like basically blows up a barn with a gun.
I like that.
Like you got to start them off easy, whether it's just tramping around Scotland or like that, and then you ramp it up. Like the fact that they ramped up Josh and Kamala, is it Kamala?
I think it's Kamana.
Okay.
Kamara. I think it's Kamara.
I may have typed it out and then autocorrect change it to Kamala. But like they ramped them up so quickly to that crane was like crazy. But I guess they had to get something big into the first couple episodes.
Yeah, and I'm glad that they did. Oh, also, Brian Cox. I liked his like sense of humor. He also reminded me of number 2 from The Prisoner.
I can see that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say, having watched it, there is an answer to the question of if they actually get the money. So they get the money that they've banked. Like anytime he writes banked, if they get eliminated, they like there was after I forget someone else got eliminated, and it showed bank like after they got eliminated it said banked that much. So that means they did get that money at least.
Yeah, I could see that. Just like The Weakest Link, another classic British game show.
I actually never watched much of Weakest Link.
That show I actually did watch because they did the Doctor Who one and the Star Trek one.
I remember. See, that's what I remember seeing is the one, which is funny because they also had an episode of The Weakest Link in Doctor Who.
Yeah, it all comes together.
All right, do we want to rate this?
I also have Spy Fact versus Fiction.
Oh, great.
Because I'm prepared. Okay, so when they were measuring the boa constrictor, I was like, why don't they just go outside, yell at a random Italian person, can I borrow your phone, and then Google how long a boa constrictor is?
Yeah, but they want this boa constrictor, not any other.
Yeah, I'm getting to that. So according to Britannica.com, the snake's adult length is typically about 10 feet or 3 meters, but individuals of more than 18 feet or 5.5 meters have been reported. So there's no universal length for a boa constrictor.
Yeah.
Okay. And then also I Googled the art heist. MSN.com, the Spider-Man of Paris is the guy who did it. A guy named Vijeran Tomic from Bosnia moved to Paris at the age of 10 and was what they call a second story man, someone who broke into places through the window. And he started with centuries-old books, and then he used a crossbow to get into an apartment to steal valuable artworks worth about $1 million. He did that in 2000. And then in 2004, he met a gallery owner named Jean-Michel Corvez, who directed him to get specific things so that Corvez could sell them. So then, starting in May 2010, Tomic went to the Musée d'Art Moderne. Sorry about these pronunciations. And he used a paint stripper to expose the screws on a window and then removed them. And then he removed the window using suction pads right out of a spy movie, cut the lock on the security gate, stole, like they said, something like $100 million worth of art, and took him 2 trips. It got a lot of news, and the French authorities really tried to find him, but it was the skateboarder who noticed him behaving suspiciously near the museum who tipped off the authorities, It still took them 6 months until eventually an informant kind of told on him, and then he was on the run. And then eventually Tomek was short on funds, attempted to rob another apartment, and was caught in the act. During the police interview, he would confess to the theft of the 5 artworks. So just a little bit more detail about that.
Interesting. I was wondering if it was actually a real
Yes, it
thing.
was. Yes, it was. Okay, and then my favorite quotes.
Yeah.
When the Bone brothers are going over the wall, one of them says something like, "Do a shifty over the wall," which I thought was a funny Britishism. And then when the sisters are I can't believe they did this, when they made them like walk into what it must have been a really cold Scottish loch.
Yeah.
So one of them's going in and the other one yells at her, "I'm here for moral support. Try not to think about the cold." All right, so now it's time for our ratings on a scale of 1 to 10 martinis, 1 being Avengers 1998 and 10 being Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. How would we rate these first 2 episodes of 007 Road to a Million? Why don't you go first?
I feel like we have to have a different scale of it for this, but because, like, you know, obviously it's not a spy movie, it's not a spy show. It is a game, or it's a reality show. But I mean, judging it from our usual scale, I'm gonna go like 6.5.
Okay, you want to expand on that at all?
I mean, I enjoyed it. And not just because of the Bond. Like, that's an interesting. Like, yeah, like you said, it was shot beautifully. There's beautiful locations and great music. There's not so much Bond in terms of what the challenges they're doing aside from the crane. So, and I like I said, I'm sure, and I know that it ramps up. But for the first 2 episodes, I give it a 6.5 martinis out of 10.
That's cool. So I'm glad you liked it.
Okay.
I did not like it as much.
Okay, I figured. Yeah.
So the crane stuff was good. The endless talking drove me insane. I did not like the sadism of watching them like sit there and sweat while they're waiting to see if their answers are correct. I didn't like the trivia. It was filmed well, and I liked the people, but I really can't see myself watching it unless they like really, you know, like move along with the pacing here, because these episodes are 50 minutes. I will give it a 4 out of 10. It wasn't like bad, but it also wasn't particularly good.
I think, like, for me, it's like, like I said, I'm not really a reality show person unless there's a hook. This had my hook.
Yes, it did. The perfect hook for you.
Like the pack with the dogs also had my hook. This also has my hook. So and as you watch more of it, you get to know, like, you know, certain teams stay on and keep going, and so you get to know them better. So that for me becomes more the hook as well, is actually getting to know the teams.
Yeah,
but it's, for me, it was just fascinating that this is a game show where you, like, none of the contestants seemingly ever meet, and that they just drop you into, I guess, which is very James Bond. You get just dropped into the adventure. You don't get an explanation of how and why everything's happening.
That's true. Yeah, I also wanted to say I like the controller stuff. But I feel like the show didn't make a good first impression on me, because it's the brothers and they're like, "We had a hard life. We really need this $1 million. Now watch us suffer in order to get it." I was like, that's not fun. The James Bond movie is supposed to be fun. It's not supposed to make me sad.
That's funny.
Unless there's no time to die.
I didn't think of it that way, so that is interesting. All right.
Well, that's why I'm here. All right, well, thank you for joining us for this Dead Drop episode. You can find us on social media at the Spy-Fi Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and our merch store at redbubble.com. Until next time, I'm Zach.
And I'm Christian.
And we are the Spy-Fi Guys, signing off.
Thank you for listening to the Spy-Fi Guys. If you enjoyed our podcast, please be sure to give us a 5-star rating on iTunes. The theme song from this podcast is Mistake the Getaway by Kevin MacLeod from Incompetech.com. Licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0. Films, books, and television shows reviewed by our podcast are the intellectual property of their respective copyright holders, and no infringement is intended.
This is a personal podcast. Any views, statements, or opinions expressed in this podcast are personal and belong solely to the participants. They do not represent those of people, institutions, or organizations that the participants may or may not be associated with in a professional or personal capacity unless explicitly stated. Any views or opinions are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, or individual.
You can find our podcast on social media at The Spy-Fi Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.